focus specifically on the strategic plan for the OST office. Excuse me. We have a lot to discuss this evening, and hopefully it will help move us forward as a collective around what we will be working on in the coming years coming out of the OST office. So thank you all for joining us. Excuse me. So you want to, have we reached quorum, Alex? I mean, we are not making any decisions, but it'll be helpful to know how many commissioners are actually on the call so far.
Yeah, it doesn't look like we've reached quorum as of yet. I can give me 1 second to count, but I know we haven't reached quorum just yet.
And that is fine for today's meeting specifically because we are not making decisions. This is a discussion. Quorum will be required once we come to the point regarding the approval of the actual final strategic plan, but it would be helpful to be aware of who we have on the call right now.
Commissioner Peacock has joined.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Peacock. I was getting us started as we awaited for you. We are on slide 2.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, Commission.
So I was just saying that, though quorum is not required because this is a discussion meeting, we would like to at minimum, like to know who from the commissioners is on the call. So please move on to slide 2. Sorry, 3, Alex. Thank you.
Okay, great. Slide 3. Okay.
I believe a quorum is required because it's a commission meeting.
It's only if it's if we're making a decision.
Yeah,
which we are not.
Because this was a special meeting that was called, I believe that rule didn't apply, but we're gonna still take a roll call just to document who all's here for the sake of the minutes and the votes. But since this isn't an official prearranged commission meeting, there's a little bit of a flexibility with the rules there.
And again, because we're not making a decision, this is a discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Quorum is not necessarily needed for this. What we will need quorum for is when the plan is finalized.
So I'm sorry, the agenda appears to have approval of minutes and things from previous meetings. Does that mean we're not voting to approve those things?
Those are coming up.
Okay, but then therefore there would be votes taken, so there should be quorum?
Well, because good point. But what it will say is that we can hold those.
No.
Who's
Mr.
saying
Soto.
no? Sorry. Oh, well, because this meeting is focused on discussing the plan, we could shelf those until the September meeting, which will be required, from which quorum will be required. But in the interim, we will be keeping track of how many commissioners are here, and if there's not enough for quorum to be met for those approval of minutes, we could skip those for now and focus in on the strategic plan.
Yeah, I think the main thing with the quorum, commissioners, is we have to meet the quorum in order to be able to make official votes. Even if we don't have enough commissioners to make the quorum, we can still hold the meeting. But at that point, then whatever votes made without quorum wouldn't be considered official. So, we can take a roll call and see how that goes. But yeah, again, this was a special meeting that was added just for the sake of discussing the strategic plan. We also have a couple public speakers, so we can get to the public comment next. Thanks. Okay. So it looks like our first, I apologize if I pronounce your name incorrectly, but looks like our first registered speaker is Mary Lozerdo with the Sitar Art Center. So the floor is yours whenever you're ready. Or actually, sorry about that. My apologies. Looks like Riley Daniclo with DC Action was registered to speak first, followed by Mary after that. So Riley, are you ready to speak?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Riley Danelko. I'm a policy analyst at DC Action, home of the DC Out of School Time Coalition. The coalition, for those who don't know, includes more than 70 member organizations that provide OST programming across the district, and many are funded through Learn24 grants. I'm here this evening to share with the OST commissioners some important concerns that community-based youth development organizations have raised about the direction of the OST office, in hopes of creating a stronger, more collaborative OST sector that is truly responsive to the needs of DC youth and families. To briefly set the stage for my comments, it's important to note that the 2023 needs assessment shows us that DC is short 51,000 after-school spots and 193,000 summer program spots. In Wards 7 and 8 in particular, current programs can meet just 23% and 22% of the need, respectively. These are huge numbers, but they represent actual young people who want and deserve access to youth development programs. I know that everyone here supports the expansion of OST access in the district, and that's why you're here on the commission. But what I'd like to share tonight is the need for greater discussion about how we will work together to reach universal OST access in DC. Many OST providers and youth advocates were disappointed with the outcome of the fiscal year 2024 budget, which kept flat the OST grants budget while allocating $5 million for the creation of the new My After School DC initiative that seemingly appeared overnight with no consultation from stakeholders. The DC OST Coalition, DC PAVE, and several council members advocated for at least $10 million, in some cases more, in increased grant funding for after school and summer programs. This could have created at least 4,000 more spots for young people. We maintain that all additional funding for FY24 for OST should go directly toward expanding access to in-demand OST, especially given that the district cut an additional $6 million in local OST funding that previously supported the 21st Century Community Learning Centers grant. However, if My After School DC must move forward, the OST office has a responsibility to ensure that the $3.1 million in grant funding included in the budget for this initiative is distributed in a way that's equitable. The draft of the strategic plan correctly puts emphasis on wards 5, 6, 7, and 8 as the DC wards where need is greatest and where resources must be targeted. And the My After School DC funding for FY24 should be directed at those wards. However, given the numbers I shared at the beginning of my comments, we must think bigger than adding 1,500 seats a year if we are to address the gaps with the urgency this issue calls for. At 1,500 seats a year, it would take DC 34 years to provide the 51,000 seats needed, and that's just for after school.
Just a quick note, Riley, we're at time, but I'll give you a couple more seconds because we have a lot to discuss today. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. I also wanted to share some feedback and recommendations from OST providers who felt they were pushed out of the running for the Learn24 funding this year. The OST office should revise updated RFA requirements, which disproportionately deem small CBOs ineligible for grant funding that they previously relied on to provide in-demand programming to youth. The last thing I'll say is that the updated strategic plan does include a section about using more qualitative data to measure impact, which is a step in the right direction. But on the whole, the OST office and other agencies must build systems and relationships that ensure major decisions about OST are not made without stakeholder engagement. That's all I have time for, but I just want to thank the commissioners. And on behalf of the coalition, we really want you to see us as partners in this work because we all have a shared mission. Thank you for letting me speak tonight.
Thank you for the excellent commentary. We definitely appreciate you joining us to speak, and it's great to hear what you have to say within the community engagement. So thank you. Commissioners, are there any questions or comments for the speaker?
Good evening, Chairperson Peacock. This is Commissioner Hill. Do you want to ask a question?
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Hill.
For Ms. Riley, and the number of organizations, you have a count of the number of organizations who are affected by this specific funding?
Unfortunately, I don't have an exact count, but we did have at least 70 organizations sign on to a letter protesting the new requirements in the RFA. So all those organizations we can assume that they were either impacted by it directly or felt that as a whole, it was a step in the wrong direction for the grant program.
70 organizations, that's significant in my opinion. Okay, so out of those 70 organizations, those organizations represent all the wards in the District of Columbia, or again, were those predominantly in Ward 5, 7, and 8?
Across the district.
Okay.
And I'd be happy to connect you. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say thank you for your response.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Commissioners, are there any other questions before we proceed?
Sorry, this is Commissioner Berkey. Could we get your full testimony in writing shared with the commission? If you could send it to, the Learn24 office, then they could share it out with us.
Yeah, I can email it to I think I have the list of emails of the commissioners, so I can send it to everyone today.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. That would be excellent. Wonderful. Well, again, thank you for your comments. We really appreciate you coming to speak with us and joining us. We'll definitely take that into consideration and try to address the issues that you brought up. Now, Chris, sure, absolutely. Sorry, go ahead.
I have one question as well. So I did hear you mention about the organizational feedback. In the funding and capacity building, we made a recommendation to host a 30-day public commentary period to gather feedback, qualitative and quantitative data from OST stakeholders before making any changes to RFAs, program dosage requirements, things like that. Is that what you're recommending, or is it something above that you think that we're missing from that specific recommendation?
Yeah, I think that's a really good approach to have the public comment. I guess I would just ask, like, if the office were to do that, like, to what extent would they actually be willing to make adjustments based on what was said or in the public comment period? So I think that's one tool, but I think what would be even better was having more of a proactive approach where when there is talk and strategic, discussions happening about making a change to a grant, like sort of having those conversations before the changes are made versus maybe after like, you put together a grant and then put it up for comment. So I think, being more proactive as opposed to reactive, I think would be one approach. But in addition, I think having the public comment afterward certainly would be helpful as well.
Thank you, Riley. So I have a follow-up to that. I don't know if we'll get into this later, but Dr. Lowe, I know when I just had a chance to review the items that were sent out yesterday, and I see that some of the stuff highlighted in yellow was put into the plan, but that specifically, like getting feedback before making any major changes, that was not put into the overall plan. Is there a reason for that, or?
There is, and we can go into it once we get to the strategic plan. But I want to honor the time now for public commentary, but we can discuss that once we get into take it up to today's meeting. But yes, that is up for discussion later on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sounds great. Well, thank you again. Next, our registered speaker is Mary Lizardo with the Sitar Arts Center, and the floor is now yours. Thank you.
Hello, thank you. My name is Mary Lizardo, and I'm the executive coordinator at Sitar Arts Center. Here at Sitar, students engage in affordable, high-quality education and workforce development in the visual, digital, and performing arts. Our programs take place year-round during out-of-school time in Sitar's state-of-the-art facilities, and today I urge the OST office to consider several critical points as we discuss the future of My After School DC initiative and the overall state of OST. The launch of My After School DC initiative should be paused until after the completion of the strategic plan and until more funding is secured. Allocating the entire $5 million received for fiscal year 2024 as grants to OST providers is crucial to address the funding crisis within the sector. That was 1. 2. It is essential for the OST office to revise the updated RFA requirements. The current criteria excludes small community-based organizations by deeming them ineligible for grant fundings that are previously relied upon to provide valuable programming to our youth. And 3, stakeholder engagement is vital in shaping major OST decisions. The OST office, OSSE, and DCPS should consistently engage with stakeholders when contemplating policy changes, grants, or regulations. Engagement must be genuine and consistent, taking into consideration the effects of youth and families served by OST programs. Let's work together now and in the future to ensure the success and sustainability of the OST sector. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you very much for the excellent commentary. Very relevant right now with our discussion on the strategic plan. So we really appreciate having you. Commissioners, do you have any questions, comments, or concerns for our speaker? Okay. All right. Well, thank you again for joining us. We really appreciate it. It would be great if you could share the written testimony with us as well, so we could continue to keep you in the loop. But thank you very much for joining us to testify. We really appreciate having you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Great. Now, okay, commissioners, so we are, again, this is not a meeting where we require a quorum due to the status of the meeting being something to just have a discussion on the OST strategic plan. However, we are going to do a roll call to see who's here in attendance.
Sorry, Chairperson Peacock, we have one more public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Jackie Carter.
Gotcha. Thank you. My apologies.
My apologies.
All right, go ahead. Thanks.
Hello? Am I off mute?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for allowing me to testify today. So I basically want to echo the sentiments of the speaker before me regarding the $5 million that OST grantees and community members advocated for, that we are advocating for that money to be added to the $16.6 million that's part of the OST grant-making funds already. And I would like to say that to put a pause on the My After School DC and find some additional funding for that so that the $5 million can go to increasing funding for especially small nonprofits in wards 5, 6, 7, and 8. My last thing is I had a question about grant reviewing. And that question is it a fact that the rules say that no more than half of a review panel members, I'm talking about OST internal staff members, can review grants? I'll rephrase the question again. It came out a little choppy. The office used internal members to review grant applications when the code states that no more than half of a review panel members may be employees or contractors of the office or members of the commission. And excuse my voice, I have a cold. And finally, I'd like to say that the OST office has become a very unfriendly place, even a hostile environment. And I'm not the only one who feels the hostility coming from leadership. There is not the idea that we are partners, OST office and grantees who serve the young people in this community, but that we are combatants. And it's very disheartening. I feel very much bullied by OST leadership. And disregarded. So that is my public comment. Thank you.
Chairman Peacock, may I make a comment?
Absolutely.
Ms. Carter, this is Paul Kine, the Deputy Mayor for Education. As you probably know, the OST office sits in my office. I'd love to meet with you to understand more what some of your concerns are. We intend to be deeply collaborative and respectful, and the idea that you feel something different from that causes me some concern. It is not our intent in any way to do that. I work closely with the out-of-school time office and all the people in it. I know their respect and admiration for providers such as the ones that you mentioned. So I'm surprised, but I would love to talk with you more about it if you're willing to do so. I would like to invite you to a conversation.
I accept your invitation, and I'd also like to bring other members who not only feel that way, but are afraid to testify because they feel they will be retaliated against. So I'd love to bring them along with me if that's okay with you.
I am here to serve and at your service. So it certainly can be a meeting with whomever you'd like to include.
Should I send you an email, or how do we?
I will. Yes, I'll put the my address and my chief of staff in the chat right now, and that's a great way to reach out so we can set something up. But I'll look forward to the discussion.
Thank you very kindly.
Yes, I agree with those sentiments. I'm extremely saddened to hear that you feel that way, especially regarding the hostility. But I hope that there's some way that we can continue to hear you out and address those concerns and move forward in a positive manner that makes you and the other allies that you had mentioned feel more comfortable. Commissioners, are there any questions or comments for the speaker?
Yes, sir, Commissioner Hill, and I do have a question. And for complete transparency, Ms. Carter does sit with our funding capacity meeting as a committee member. But in terms of the $5 million that you were talking about, Ms. Jackie, how do you think that will affect our city in terms of, you mentioned specific allocations towards 5, 7, and 8. And I know that you do great work on the ground in those communities. And you have a great amount of courage to come in front of this committee and share your sentiments. But I want to hear a little bit more about how do you think, in terms of those dollars being diverted into other areas, how do you think those organizations in those areas are able to survive, or what do you think is going to happen with that particular quality of service?
Right, and I thank you so much for that question. Currently, there are just counting off the top of my head, I'm talking grassroots, small nonprofits. There's about 13 of them that have not applied for OST funding, and just most recently have not. That I actually convinced to apply, but did not apply because of the most recent RFA was actually designed for professional grant writer. That $5 million, if they were given access to just 2 million, 2.5 million of that money, they could create more seats. So we're at the grassroots level. We're serving young people who are not even on the radar. And I'm talking about kids who are ankle monitored, kids who are coming out of DYRS, kids who are going into the DYRS system, who are on the verge of drug use. I'm talking opioids and fentanyl, kids who are committing petty crimes. These are the young people we're serving. And some of these organizations, I'm going to say at least 60% of these organizations are funding out of their own pockets because they cannot get the dollars. So one of the reasons the DC Action Coalition did a great job of galvanizing us and getting us to advocate for that increase in that budget was so that those organizations could create more seats for these young people. So just as an example, this is now the month of August. From March to August, my organization alone has seen, I'm sorry, one second. my organization alone has seen, I would say about 8 of our young people murdered. Take them out. I've seen about 8 of our young people shot down. We even had a dad who tried to defuse the situation, murdered in front of his son. So what's happening now? Our numbers are growing. Children's Legacy Theater, just like these other small nonprofits, are serving upwards of 100 to 150 kids a year. That's what's on my roster. I'm robbing Peter to pay Paul to keep programming going. If we could get a true partnership with the OST office, and that $5 million could give us a little bit more money, and remove the barrier, because there's a barrier there too. And that barrier is if you want to get more money from the OST office, you have to have an audit. No other DC agency is requiring an audit from small grassroots nonprofits, and then we can't get more than 40,000, or we can't get more than 80,000. So we saw an opportunity. Yes, let's advocate for the OST office to get that money. They got the money, and then they went the other way. Now they're going to create something called My After School DC to serve children who are in elementary schools, when that work is already being done by members of the DC Action Coalition, by organizations you're currently funding. So it's almost creating a double dipping type of situation. So with that $5 million, we could create more seats, we could save more lives. Those numbers that Riley gave at the beginning, those are real numbers. And those are children who will slip between the cracks because we don't have the money to create the seats to capture them. Right? I'm taking a step away from programming today to participate in this meeting because it's important. On a weekly basis, we program 5 days a week because we have to. Because if we're not here, those kids are in the streets. We have kids who are homeless. We have kids who are couch surfing. We have kids who are going in and out of foster care. And these organizations, these grassroots nonprofits, create safe places for them. They bond with the adults there. And I'm not just talking about Children's Legacy Theater. I'm talking about these other 13 programs that need that money. They need it. They need it to serve the children. Our children are dying. Our Black children are dying. Our boys and our girls. And we, the community and the grassroots nonprofits, we need the OST leadership to see that. So it's just not numbers. These are real people, real children, real lives. We know you love them, Deputy Mayor Kine, Dr. Lowe. We know you love them. We know you do. We just need you to show it. Put the money where your heart is. So that $5 million would go a long way.
Thank you, Jackie, for sharing your sentiments. And we absolutely do commiserate with what you're sharing with us. In the interest of time, Chair Peacock, if you could just keep public comment, because we will have another meeting in September. We do honor what is being said right now, but I do want to make sure that the crux of this meeting is focused on the plan. I see a couple of more hands raised, so I'll defer to you, Chair Peacock, on how you want to proceed with the other hands that have been raised.
And that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Why cut me off? Let me finish what I'm saying. I think I've earned the right to speak today, but I'm going to go ahead and shut up and let it go. But that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. Just jump in there and cut me off. I was responding to a question that was asked. But
Jackie, I did not call you off. You paused. I waited for you to pause before I interjected. And I do want to be respectful of other people's hands that are raised so that there's not a monopolization of the conversation.
On that note as well, we do greatly appreciate your testimony and thank you for joining us to speak. These are definitely some very serious concerns that need to be addressed, and we want to hear you out. We'll set up that meeting with with the office and with Deputy Director Kine. But in order to be able to address these concerns and get the funding out, we do have to be able to get this strategic plan approved for the fiscal year. So I think that's really that's where Dr. Lowe is trying to move towards, so that we can get that out the door and be able to get the funding to you all. Does that make sense?
So Chairperson Peacock, so since Dr. Klein has interjected in terms of opening up a conversation with Ms. Jackie, here at this particular meeting will commissioners, and I know that you also wanted to be a part of it. So is that going to be something that other commissioners can attend, since that was brought before us as well in front of before this commission this evening?
I would love to be, but I think that one's up to Deputy Mayor Kine.
I mean, because she spoke about hostility and combatants and being bullied, and we're all part of the office, so we're very much concerned about those issues as well.
Agree. Yeah, so I'll defer up the chain of command on that one, but
I mean, I would simply share there's going to be some protocols. So firstly, Ms. Carter, thank you so much for expressing your views. They are antithetical to the way in which we are trying to operate. Dr. Lowe is trying to operate. So I'm looking forward to talking to you in more detail. In terms of the commission, it does feel like there are protocols which govern the process of commission meetings and commissioners gathering and open meeting laws. And it may be more useful for Ms. Carter to come back to a commission meeting if you want to hear more from her about her concerns and perspectives, rather than having the commission attend a meeting that I and the team hold with her, because then we may have to have an open meeting, which will actually interfere with scheduling and cause challenges. I am personally very open to talking to any and all commissioners about these topics. Clearly, Ms. Carter is happy to talk with you as well. So this is much more of a process question, which potentially we could figure out offline. But as I said, if a certain number of commissioners show up at a meeting in my office, it has to be an open meeting, and then you have a particular kind of challenge. But I think there are lots of ways for us to learn from Ms. Carter and other providers in the field who have perspectives to share, potentially even at the September meeting of the OST Commission.
Thank you.
thank you. Yeah, that sounds like a great outcome for it. So that would work as well. Thank you. Okay, I do see we have two more hands raised. Commissioners, I do want to hear what you have to say. Is there any way to keep it somewhat brief so we can try to get through as much of the strategic plan as possible? So I want to be respectful of everyone's opinion, but we do have a lot of work to get done today. All right, and it looks like the first is let's see, Commissioner Jackson.
I'm not a commissioner, I'm a guest. Thank you for taking my question. So the way I came at this opportunity to talk to you all is through talking to Councilmember Pinto, having a meeting with Councilmember Allen and Councilmember Gray's office in regards to public safety. In regards to public safety, that's where I think Mrs. Crump has some validity in terms of where the funds and how the funds are being used. So it was suggested that I attend this meeting because the council is coming back in session, and I'm hoping that through you, Deputy Mayor, and through the commission, you could ask the council members for emergency legislation for some additional funding that you would need, so that may be another means for you to obtain funding for educational solutions to public safety issues. That's what I wanted to say. And I have your email. I will send you that information, and hopefully you'll be able to do something about it, sir. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We appreciate that feedback. And Commissioner Crump, looks like you had your hand raised. Is there anything you still want to say?
Yes, mine is more of a question than a comment. So I'm just trying to understand, what is the official policy on commissioners testifying? Because like me as a leader of a nonprofit, I have testimony and opinions that I want to address the commission with, but I don't know if it's something that I can do. So I wanted to ask the commission first.
This is Deputy Mayor Kine. I'll just share from my experience. that as a commissioner, you are entitled to weigh in and offer your perspectives and opinions whenever you like, once the chair recognizes you. You don't actually technically need to testify or offer public, but you're entitled to offer perspectives and opinions at any time throughout the discussion once the chair recognizes you. So that would be the typical operations.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Commissioner Crump, you're definitely welcome to share any of your opinions here. Is there something specific you had right now that you wanted to mention, or can we get to the strategic plan and come back to it?
We can go to the strategic plan first. Part of it is on the strategic plan, and then some of it
Okay.
is just diddling some of the comments that were already made.
Okay. Understood. Understood. Okay.
Please return to the slides.
Thank you. Okay, so I believe we were at the roll call for the announcement of quorum for today. So we will go through a roll call for attendance. Commissioner Berkey.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Coates.
Present.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Crump.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Desir. Commissioner Hanson.
Present.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Hill.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Jenkins. I don't see your name there. Okay. Commissioner Verlin. Okay. Don't see his name there. Commissioner Peeler.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Saffron. Commissioner Siegel. Commissioner Taylor. And Dr. Lowe.
Present.
Right. Thank you. So, okay. Although this is not an official voting meeting, just for the commission's records, we do have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 commissioners present today. Okay, so the next item is the agenda. Commissioners, so we won't vote on the agenda today, but if you could please review the agenda, take a look at it, make sure it looks good. If there are any questions or concerns or anything you disagree with, please let us know if there's any discussion that needs to be had on it. Okay, and if there's no discussion on the agenda, we will move on to the meeting minutes from the previous commission meeting. Again, we will not vote on these today, but please take a look. The meeting minutes from June 22nd as well as the July 20th meeting are both provided. If there are any changes or revisions that need to be made, please bring it to our attention, or if there's any discussion to be had on the minutes. If not, we'll continue to proceed. Okay. And if there is no discussion on the meeting minutes, we can go ahead and dive right into the OST strategic plan. Dr. Lowe, if you're ready, the floor is yours.
Absolutely, thank you. So as Alice, can you please pull up the draft plan for me? And as that occurs, I wanted to share a little bit of information. It was attached to the meeting materials. So thank you all for your commentary, for your public comments, for your thoughts, for your constructive criticism regarding the OST office and regarding the OST office leadership. We truly do appreciate everything that has been said today regarding the OST office, and we'll be taking it under advisement. Specifically regarding the strategic plan, there was lots of substantive and helpful comments and conversations during our last commission meeting, which we took back to the quote unquote drawing board, and we sought to incorporate as much as was possible and that made the most sense regarding the OST office, both now, but regarding where we aspire to be for the next 3 years or so. So before we begin our discussion, I wanted to share a little bit with you guys what has changed specifically regarding the plan in consideration of what was noted in our last meeting for feedback, recommendations, commentary, etc. So once we pull up the plan, I'm gonna give you an overarching summary of the change, and then we can go into it a little bit deeper because I know you guys want to go through the plan slide by slide. So during the last commission meeting, it was noted that the plan felt like the OST Commission Committee thoughts were an addendum to the plan. And so I do appreciate that feedback. And so what we did was that we moved. We couldn't do all of them. We would love to, but we unfortunately cannot do all. So we sought to incorporate what made the most sense for our office, given where we are right now in the OST juncture. And so what we did was that we moved each committee's recommendations and commentary, each committee slide, we try to incorporate it into the actual plan, into the actual bodies of work that are being done, that will be done through the OST office. Also, it was mentioned that, so overarchingly, the OST Commission is supportive of and helps us, advising us and guides us for our plan for the next couple of years, 23 through 26. What we also did was that, so in addition to incorporating the committees into the actual plan, there was a recommendation made about focusing in, I think it was Commissioner Siegel, please correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a recommendation to have more focus in on year-round programming so our kids can have access to OST throughout the entire year, calendar year, as opposed to during the school year or the summer. We wanted to be both. And so that was incorporated into the language for the plan as well. What else? It was also recommended about capacity building, having that be a part of the plan, focusing in specifically on our organizations, and we sought to include that as well into the plan. And you will see more of this shortly. What else can I mention to you all? I'm sure there's more, but and it will come to me as we dive deeper into the plan. But I do want to reiterate and to underscore that. This is like semantics. The font was too small, so we made it bigger. We split it into 2 pages specifically for the funding and capacity building committee, so that so we want to be responsive to all of the feedback that was shared regarding the plan. So what I'm going to do now is provide a quick, so you guys can understand what you've seen. I'm not sure if everyone has gotten a chance to look at it as yet, but really quickly, in the plan highlighted in yellow, which you will see shortly, you will see where we have taken from each committee and incorporated it into the plan, so you can see where it fits in to the OST strategic plan. We've also included as an appendix at the bottom of the plan, the original slides from each committee, so you can see specifically what was included and what we were not able to include for the plan. So there's 100% transparency. You all can see what we are working with. You can see where your thoughts have been incorporated and included into the strategic plan. So we can move on to the next slide, Alex. And this is our time for discussion. OST commissioners specifically, if you have any comments, please bring yourself off of mute, because we want this to be and we have intentionally turned the chat off because we want it to be an ongoing conversation amongst the commissioners where others can absolutely listen in. to this conversation. So for the plan, we have boilerplate language that provides an overview of our office, who we are, what we do, and how we do it as an office. So you see here, as for the plan's overview, you have our vision and mission, our core values and functions, which you will see shortly. You can also pull up your own copy of the plan which we have sent to you. Shanna sent you guys to your inboxes. So we have why we're doing this, what we're doing, and how we're doing it through our priorities and activities, our measures for success, accountability, timeline, etc. And this is also, again, in being responsive to the needs assessment, which we have hyperlinked into the document. And also, this is also important to know, we are supportive, 100% supportive of the mayor's vision of after school for all. And our office is a component of that. We're not there yet, but we are working towards us getting there as a collective, as an office, but also as an office that operates under the mayor's vision, but making sure that every single student in DC has access to after school programming, with the OST office being a component of that. Any thoughts before we move on to the next slide? This is boilerplate language, which we're going to dive a little bit deeper into. Next slide, Alex. Thank you. So here we have an overview of the office, who we are, what the Learn24 network is. The history of the office is included as well, which will also be included in the final plan once it has been completed. Anything that is highlighted is for our own internal purposes to know where we need to update, where applicable for the plan. This slide shows you the history of the Learn24 network. It also shows you the history of the OST office, so that everyone has the big picture and the overall context of where we were, who we are right now, and where we aspire to be. Any thoughts, commentary on this slide before we move to the next slide? Next slide, Alex. And here we have the vision. Again, this is boilerplate language of the After School for All vision. So all children, youth, and families across DC will have, this is our vision, will have access to high quality and inclusive OST programs through OST grant funded competitions and through a new initiative, example, My After School DC, After School in the City as well. And our students will have the skills, they will have the competencies and knowledge necessary to achieve, but not only to achieve, to thrive in school, in the workplace, and in their communities through initiatives that really do support and promote after school for all of our kids and families across the district. We have the OST mission that is also included. Some of our key initiatives are inclusive of, but are not limited to, school year competitions, Summer Strong, the year-round grant, which is constantly growing because there's a need for that, and we want to be responsive to that need. We have special competitions like mentorship, youth scholarship, students in the care of DC. We have Summer in the City, which we want to be an annual event and after school in the city, so that all of our families know what's available and can tap into those resources across the District of Columbia. So those are some of our key initiatives that we wanted to highlight as a precursor to the content of the plan. Any thoughts before we move forward? Next slide, Alex. So here we have the core values and functions of the OST office, where we are really focused on a number of things that really define and that guide our work. We are big on community voice, commitment to learning and growing. Equity is at the heart of the OST office, and also mutual respect and responsibility. These are all supported, thank you, Commissioner Crump. These are all supported by our committees, which are funding and capacity building, quality, outcomes, and coordination and collaboration. Yes, Commissioner Crump.
No, I can wait till you finish your comment. I just have a comment on the slide.
You can go ahead, I'm done.
Okay. So I guess this is where most of my concern comes from, but like as a director of a grassroots organization and a longstanding member of this commission, I just find myself like really troubled in the direction that we've taken under the last year, because our previous strategic plan was built upon these same core values: amplifying youth voice, fostering equity, demonstrating commitment to learning, and then also upholding mutual respect and responsibilities. However, over the last 12 months, I feel like some of the decisions that we've made run counter to these values, and some of them have been entirely omitted from the strategic plan. So, for instance, like with equity, I personally don't understand how some of the decisions we made in the last 6 months have addressed structural racism and equity aimed at dismantling these systems. For instance, the decision to increase program dosage without increasing funding correspondingly and raising questions about equity. The withdrawal of previously committed multi-grants, that calls into question for me the principle of equity. The way we've altered applications, I know it heightens competitiveness, but it doesn't have a clear equity-driven goal. The newly introduced research-based practices for over $100,000. All of these shifts like are counter or contradictory to organizations that are in like violence prevention or community-oriented outcomes. Also, the amendment of capacity building grant in 2023 is omitted from 2023 through 2026 in this plan. We'd have no clear intentions on offering capacity building grants as we previously did, which also raises concerns for me about equity, especially if that's supposed to be one of our values. Small, like other organizations said, small organizations, CDOs east of the river that are highlighted in a needs assessment, I don't feel like we've given enough coverage to it. And then also the requirement for grant managers to review grant applications, it doesn't scream equity and also has like ethical implications for me. So as we're talking to providers and we're hearing from providers and we're hearing these concerns, it doesn't seem right to me that we're saying that our core value is equity when clearly some of the decisions that we make are counter to equity. We're saying our core value is youth voice, but I still don't understand how youth and families have contributed to the decisions that we make that impact their life, especially in the light of recent changes that we've made all under this new process. It's like, I don't know where the youth voice is in that. When it comes to mutual respect and responsibility, I'm hearing organizations like Jackie, and it compels me to explore how are we honoring our resources and contributions of all the stakeholders in this shared vision that we have, addressing these issues, acknowledging feedback, and implementing mitigating measures, like I think is essential. Also, like me personally as an organization, in the last 12 months, I've had 3 different grant managers. And my last grant manager just left, and I thought she resigned, but I recently learned that she didn't. And there's potential ADA violations. There's so much stuff that I'm like really concerned with under new leadership when we're talking about like access for special needs. I think it's a conflict of interest, and I'm really troubled. So I'm prompting this commission for us to think about how, when we're looking at this strategic plan, how is it saying a commitment to learning if we're actually comparing the things that we previously did, like the number of grantees we served, the staff that we had for 2021 and 2022, compared to what we're planning in this strategic plan to increase the number of full-time employees with Learn 24, but it doesn't necessarily correlate to an increase in the number of grantees. So like the direct funding grantees versus the indirect cost on this new money that we got. I want clarification on the allocation of the 40%. Where's that $2 million of the $5 million going just for infrastructure? And if it is just for infrastructure, is that a cost that we're going to have renewing every single year? Despite OST providers advocating for the funding to go to direct programming, it just underscores the need for transparency and consideration of how we are utilizing our values and creating a strategic plan. So respectfully, I just asked leadership, how are we using these values in the strategic plan? Like, how is it playing out? Because even with like the marks that were marked in yellow for the funding and capacity building committee, I'm not happy with what was put into the strategic plan. Like, I don't see, I know you said something about capacity building, but I don't see anything about capacity building grants for small nonprofits or for any nonprofits commitment for 2023 through 2026. I don't see anything about the equity recommendations that we made, like the choices that were made on what to include and what not to include. I'm not happy with it all because I don't think it addresses the issues, the immediate issues and the damage that was done in the last 12 months. So I asked this commission to consider that as we're looking at this strategic plan.
Okay, so a couple of things, and thank you for sharing your thoughts, Commissioner Crump. I do want to clarify, and then I'll also ask for what do you recommend as we move forward. Regarding community voice, we meet quarterly with all of our stakeholders to gauge their feedback and to also provide updates. For the plan, we had, unfortunately, Deandra's not on this call, but she did engage with community members to get their feedback on the plan, and we've also included the results in the meeting materials. Our office is absolutely committed to equity. I'll share a couple of things and then I'll ask again, in consideration of your commentary, what will you then recommend as we move forward? So over the last 12 months, the OST office has grown tremendously. It has created systems where systems did not exist. And our office is fully committed to dismantling and disrupting racism and being in service of equity educationally for our kids. It was mentioned that we increased program diversity without increasing funding. We've increased funding across the board for, if not all competitions for the OST office. Every competition we've run has an increase in funding. For those who are, and also there are those who are in good standing are able to have funding for the years to come for a maximum of 3 years for the multi-year grants. Our goals are driven by equity. And so the stuff regarding grant managers, I will not speak to because that is confidential information, but know that every decision that has made in this office is done thoughtfully and in consideration of what's best for the team and what is best for the OST office and the DME in general. Now, with that said, we do have an increase in grant funding. This is neither here nor there for me. What I want to get to the heart of is this. In consideration of community voice, commitment to learning, equity, mutual respect, and responsibility, what do you recommend that we do moving forward to become better as an office regarding these 4 buckets of work? This year was a year of learning for our office, and I would suggest that there was not damage that is done because our office internally has been transformed. But with that said, again, I'm curious, I would love to hear from you all what you would recommend regarding our core values. Do they need to be updated? They may not, from what I'm hearing, they may not be adhered to. How can we better adhere to these core values based on either what you know for sure coming out of our office to be facts, or what we can do to become better based on your experience with the OST office?
So I would just like to clarify, when I was talking about funding, I was talking about comparable. So I think that some of the language that's been said is, oh, we've increased funding, but the programmatic requirements that have increased on organizations are like upward 400, 800% of what it previously was, and funding was only increased possibly by 10%. It's not comparable, is what I was saying. So we can have a narrative, oh, funding was increased from 125 to 135 or whatever the number is. But when you ask organizations to go from doing 2 hours programming a week, even though we actually know organizations do way more than that. So that's just the baseline. But when you ask them to do more, where it's at a whole totally different scale of 400%, then it's really not an increase. And then also organizations don't know if they're going to get the full amount. So it's a really scary time for organizations. One being that you have the research-based practices that limited some organizations. Two, being limited by people couldn't apply for the grant or the amount that they wanted to apply for. Three, being that organizations' program models are being changed, whether we're explicitly doing it or it's coming out of the new rules. It's something that we have to acknowledge and recognize. And I think that sometimes when we say, hey, we have mutual respect, we're listening, we're having these meetings quarterly, it's not enough if in those meetings people are telling you things, but we're not acknowledging them or making changes. And I'll give you an example. You asked, what could we do to do equity? The Funding and Capacity Building Committee gave a lot of ideas. A lot of them are in our strategic plan, our outline on the strategic plan, but clearly none of those may not be used at the discretion of Learn 24. So when I'm asking or I'm saying that community voice and mutual respect and responsibility, I'm really saying some of the information that we have already given isn't being used. So to then ask, what else could we do? It doesn't even make sense to kind of brainstorm and think about it as a team, because it doesn't necessarily feel like we're a part of a team. And that's something that we've always had as a commission. And that's where my concern is coming from, which is why I can understand when organizations are saying it. I can understand when other entities have these same things, because I feel the same way. Like, and as a commissioner, I'm frustrated with like some of the progress that we haven't made and some of the step backs that I feel we have. So I just think that we really need to look at this strategic plan carefully. And I don't want to take a whole bunch of time just looking at the core values, but I just wanted to make that statement that if our core values don't align with the strategic plan, then what are we doing?
So I did acknowledge that some of what was recommended was included into the plan and not all, because it's not humanly possible to include everything into the plan. When we get to the funding, the portions where the funding and capacity building are highlighted, we can certainly revisit which ones are included and which ones are not, because that is open to edits from the commissioner, hence this meeting being had. So again, we sought to include where we can, what makes the most sense for everyone. But if there's some things that were included or that are included that should be out, then we are more than happy to hear that, because again, we want to take what you said, say into consideration as collective, but also to do what makes the most sense for us based on where we are as a commission. The one thing I wanted to ask Commissioner Crump is, so for capacity building specifically, give us some feedback on what you are looking for. Are you looking for, what is it, a grant? And if, well, it is a grant. Specifically, like how much, targeting who, regarding the CBOs? Is it for everyone? I know it was mentioned in your recommendations, but just provide some clarity for us on that, because, and the reason why I'm asking you is this: our office and our grants have grown in the past year exponentially, and with that growth, we have to have the staff infrastructure to support it, because if we don't, we will continue to have, like you mentioned, GMS's turnover, because the staffing does not meet the demand. And so if we are recommending additional competitions, we have to also recommend additional staff. So for the capacity building, I'm curious, do you want it, and I know you mentioned small nonprofits, but who do you want it specifically to cater to? Is it for all the program providers who could benefit from capacity building, because we are the OST office for all of our orgs? Where do you want us to focus in on?
So I would
I'm
say
seeking more clarity.
Yeah, that's not a question for me to answer. I don't think that that's even a question for us to like hash out on this call. I think the fact of not offering a capacity building grant at all, it's not a new program. It's something that we've done in the past. So it's not like we're introducing something totally new. I don't think that we should go through, okay, what it should be. And I can give you ideas. Of course, there are ideas on our, even on our subcommittees thing, but that might not, it could change. So I don't think that's what we should be talking about. I think we probably should get into this strategic plan, and we can like see it and go through some of that and then just go from there. But I don't think specifically saying this target population, this number of grantees, that's not necessarily for us to figure out on this call. But to say that we're not offering any type of capacity building grant, to say that we're not gonna primarily have a 30-day public comment period based off of the things that have happened in the past when we didn't, and we just released RFAs and not have any recognition of that to organizations, I think that's where it becomes a problem. Not that we have to hash out what it looks like and all of the details right now. We just need to make a commitment to doing better, to recognizing some of these challenges and committing to doing better. And I think that when we look at the strategic plan, we can look at that. So I don't want to just waste all of our time on that specific issue, is I guess what I'm saying.
Any other comment? Thank you, Commissioner. Any other commentary before we move forward?
The only thing I just wanted to raise is the community voice. And I just wanted to ensure that we're using various avenues for communication. A lot of times there are people in the community that aren't aware of the opportunities to give input, especially as it relates to like the new programming, the strategic plan. I know there's some emails that go out, maybe some notifications on social media, but if there's just a way to expand how we involve the community, that would be awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that notation. And we will see how we can incorporate that into the updated plan. Yes, Commissioner Berkey.
Hi, I just want to note that I think that in recent meetings, we've heard more than once that there's a feeling out there in the community that the opportunity that everyone maybe hoped for when After School for All was announced as a concept hasn't been aligned with the way in which the city has chosen to dedicate something that we're going to keep bumping up against until there is a more clear process for the community voice to be the driver of where and how funding, if there is to be extra funding, if that voice is the driver of how the funds are allocated, rather than the funds being allocated and the community having to respond to it, I think we'll just be in a better place for all. And I think that's what we just keep hearing in the meetings that we've had recently, and it's definitely something to work toward. But I think that's where some of the frustration that we're hearing is really coming from. You know, that we got the out of school time community could not have been more excited by the idea of After School for All. Let's get real. So to have it turn out in the ways that it is in this fiscal year are just, it's a little bit of a setback. So that's all that I think we're dealing with right now.
Thank you, Commissioner Berkey. So what I'm hearing is that the OST office needs to revisit internally the core values and functions and how we are responding to those as an office in collaboration with community members and other OST stakeholders. Can we move forward, or I see Commissioner?
Just really quickly, yes, thank you for the comment, Ms. Commissioner Hill, Dr. Lowe. Just regards to the core values and the functions, like you were just saying, in terms of equity, and Commissioner Crump did allude a little bit on it. And I just was wondering, when we say decisions are made to recognize structural racism with the determined focus on dismantling those systems and achieving equitable outcomes for youth, as we think about these things and moving forward, is there a plan in place? And when we talk about determined focus, you know, I just I'm just concerned about the next step. Is this reality or just something I'm just reading? Just smoke, and what are we going to do to help to bring a manifestation of this equitable concerns that we have in the District of Columbia?
Is that an open-ended question for everyone or for our office to answer?
Well, that's for you. I mean, just in terms of next steps and what the plans are with regard to equitable and equity. It may be something that, we need to dig a little deeper and look a little bit more into when we put this up as a value and a function.
So what I'll say is, here is where our lens as an office is. We know that those who work, live in community know the community best. And so we are a grant-making entity, and equity undergirds our work. In addition to dismantling structural racism, what that looks like on the ground and in real time is as I start saying, okay, who's the current grantee, who's been doing the work, who's been quote unquote grassroots, who's been on the ground, who's been already doing the work in partnership with the OST office. They should be given priority. In consideration of the needs assessment, which wards were deemed priority with the biggest and the greatest needs? Those have been prioritized for us. Small nonprofits are oftentimes considered grassroots. We have responded to their desire to have additional funding, and they've gotten the largest increase for funding, almost doubling what they can get for the entire fiscal year. So structural racism and equity guide our decisions, albeit I would admit, like you guys said, we can be a little bit more collaborative and engaging with the community, which is why we are prioritizing community engagement in our expansion of our staffing structure. But next steps, like you mentioned, Commissioner Hill, is that we continue to make grants accessible to those organizations that serve communities with the greatest needs. We increase funding where we can for those specific organizations. We prioritize communities that have the greatest need, and we prioritize organizations in our grant funding that serve those communities with the greatest needs. That has been an OST value, and it will continue to drive our work as an office.
Thank you. I'm interested in continued conversation in that area. Thank you so much.
Commissioner Peeler.
Yes, just to move the conversation forward, I'm looking at the strategic plan document and just wanting to be responsive to some of the concerns that we've heard about the desire for increased community voice and specific emphasis on equity. I'm looking at page 9, where we get into some of the details for the implementation of Vision for All, for After School for All.
Please go to slide 9. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So I could see, like, for each of the steps or the key activities where you identify for the different fiscal years, we could put an emphasis on community voice and community participation. So, for example, where we have, solidify additional needs, roles and functions and hire, we could say with an emphasis on ensuring we have the capacity for community engagement. I think you could strengthen all of these action steps with an eye towards an emphasis and being more explicit about the importance of community engagement. And then that gives us as a commission a way to essentially hold the office accountable for that. So I would just suggest revisiting many of these action steps and incorporating that emphasis that we're hearing from the community to ensure that youth voice, the provider voice, and the parental voice are reflective in the work.
So I just want to add on to that, and I guess my question would be with community engagement, because I don't want us just to get stopped at community engagement, because I think in some ways, Learn 24 has said how they've engaged with the community thus far, but even with engaging with the community, so we can say, who just testified? It's not coming to my head right now. Kim Perry's organization.
Go ahead.
At DC Action, right? So DC Action engaged a lot with Learn 24, but the next question is, how is that, how are we making steps towards those engagements? So if you engage with the community and they say, hey, XYZ isn't working, and then we still do XYZ, then that community engagement is like, it's engaging the community, but their voices are not still being heard. So I think we need to take a step further and make sure that when we are engaging and how we are engaging, the community feels like they have a voice in it, their voices are being heard, and that we're acknowledging that in the steps that we're taking.
If I can just build on that, I think there's an opportunity to look at the metrics as a way to determine how that intention plays out. So, I mean, we could have, and I'm not exactly sure about like the technicalities or the specificity of how you could do this, but we could have a metric around, you know, grantee or provider satisfaction with different aspects of the grant program. So instead of, again, now I'm on slide 10, number of applications submitted for the Build My After School DC online application, it could be, you know, number of grantees, or percentage of grantees that feel like the applications are fair and allow for small nonprofits to be competitive. So I think in the outcomes there are ways to address what Commissioner Crump is asking for.
Very, very helpful, Commissioner Peeler. Super appreciate your commentary and your feedback. That was gave us some things to think about. I was just trying to capture some of the things I wanted to make sure I go back to the drawing board with. So pardon my pause. Is that Commissioner Hens?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak tonight. And I would just echo a lot of the, I think, comments and concerns that I've heard from other commissioners and public witnesses tonight. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but I think when we're looking at the metrics to be able to implement and reach the goal of after school for all, something that feels noticeably absent to me from the strategic plan is a lot of the great, I think, findings from the DC Policy Center report in terms of just the sheer number of gaps that we have to fill, and just the tremendous amount of the number of slots that we need to expand to get there. I think it's something that Riley did a really effective job highlighting in her testimony, that we're, you know, about 50,000 seats short. And I think if we're going to talk about a vision for implementing after school for all, we have to be really specific, right? I think that this is going to really help push us towards whether or not we can meet our goals, our equity goals in particular. And unless I'm reading the strategic plan wrong, I apologize if I am. I think it's page or slide 10, you know, increase the number of after school seats by 1,500. It's going to take us 3 decades to get to our goal of after school for all. And I don't think that's something that any of us should be satisfied by. And I guess I'd like to recommend that in the next version or draft of the strategic plan, in addition to taking the other process comments into consideration, I really hope that we as a commission set really ambitious goals. And I know there's a separate funding question there in terms of how are we going to, you know, get the revenue to fund this. But I think it's our job to, you know, point towards the North Star and, you know, really say that if we mean after school for all, if we really want to have an equitable after school system for all students in the district, that it also requires real resources to make that investment. And obviously, you know, we're not making decisions on how resources are allocated, but I think we need to say this is the number. DC Policy Center, you know, it's the first report we've gone on this in 5 or 10 years. You know, there's a real roadmap there. And if we want to get there, we need this district to start making major investments. And I can say in some of the conversations I've had with council members and council member offices, they do look to this body for recommendations. And if we come out of this process and we say we only want to add 1,500 seats a year, we're only going to be at best adding 1,500 seats a year. And so I think we need to be much more ambitious in our final recommendations.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Hanson. Agreed, and we will make some changes in anticipation of our next meeting for you all to review. I'm all about ambition and smart goals and pushing the envelope so we can get OST into the hands of our kids. So appreciate your commentary. Is that an old time, Commissioner Crump, or is that a new hand being raised? We can't hear you. Oh, sorry. Okay. Pull the plan back up. Alex.
The plan is still up on my screen.
Can you guys see it? I can. Can you guys see it?
Yes, we see it.
Oh, okay.
What slide would you like me to be on?
Oh, okay.
We just jumped quite a bit.
Yeah, also, do we have a strategy on how we're going over this tonight? Because we technically have 8 minutes left. So is everybody willing to stay longer, or are we going to look at specific slides that commissioners want to go over?
I was going to go slide by side, but we jumped to honor Commissioner Peeler's which one to tie into, which I do appreciate. If you all, it depends on what do you guys want to do. I could jump to specific slides that you guys want to discuss in the interest of time, but I do also want to honor that you had requested as a collective that we go through each slide for the commission meeting today. So I can make a decision, or someone can chime in really quickly. If not, I'll make the decision on how we proceed.
Well, then I think we need to go back because we hit on this type of question when we last looked at this thing, like, how the 60% was going to go to the certain wards. Anyway, I just think there were still a lot of questions on so many slides. If we could
so
just
let's go back to slide 5, Alex. That's where I think that's where we were finished.
Right, Dr. Law, I guess my question is, are we, as a commissioner, are we going to stay on later to go through the rest of the slides, or are we only going to get through the first 2 slides? I guess is my question. Because if we go from the beginning, which I think everybody agreed to because we want to go through the whole thing, but if we don't have enough time to go through the whole thing, if everybody's not committing to staying longer, then we probably should look at specific slides that each commissioner wants to review.
Which slides, are there any slides that you're chomping at the bit to discuss? And if so, which ones?
Well, I mean, I could speak for the quality committee. We had a meeting specifically to discuss the last, the version of the strategic plan that came before this particular revision. And one of the things that we noticed was that it appeared that the quality committee was listed in some places where aligned to strategies that did not seem to suit the type of work that the quality committee has been responsible for.
Do you have a specific example that we can
pull
from the slide?
So we were assigned to strategies 1, 2, and 6. And for example, in strategy 1, we felt that we should not be responsible for the entire strategy, that the bulk of the strategy should actually be a funding and capacity building effort.
So Commissioner Berkey, that has been updated. For quality.
Most of it speaks. Okay.
Can you guys hear me?
Go ahead.
Oh, what I was saying is that is the old version. It has been updated based on that feedback that was shared. So for example, the quality committee has been allocated, and again, this is a OST Commission collective effort, but quality specifically is on slide 18, strategy 4. And you can see for that, if you can move over to slide 18, Alex, that is where we took what you said into consideration and it made sense. And so we, in the updated plan that was shared, we have plugged in with the establishing the youth assessor, etc., to focus in on continued commitment to quality and capacity building. And you can see on slide 18 where we have plugged in the recommendations from the quality committee specifically for strategy number 4. So we did move it based on what you guys shared from strategy 1, because what you said did make sense, and we have incorporated it into what is going to happen for, or what we recommend to happen for the OST office in our continued commitment to quality and capacity building. And again, you can see where it's highlighted, where we plugged in the commentary, the recommendations from the quality committee into the actual slide.
Okay, so we're no longer associated with like summer programming. There was something about summer other than the Weichart assessments of the summer programs. So I will then re-review this newer version to see if we worked from the one that immediately preceded this version. We weren't looking at the original one that was distributed to the committee. We were looking at a otherwise modified. This is yet another version. So I'll have to see how you revised everything in this current one.
Thank you, Commissioner Merkin. My apologies, but you were going in and out, but yes. Yes. If you can, please take a look. We've sought to incorporate your recommendations, as you can see, and if there's any other things you want to see updated, please let us know. Anyone else that has pressing, like, let's get to our slide, please, or to our strategy, or to our where we were incorporated. I know we have 2 minutes, but just want to honor anyone who has a pressing request. Okay. So I welcome anyone on this call, our commissioners. If you need some more time to kind of marinate, digest on, and respond to the plan, please. I've taken notes already, so I can go back to the drawing board with my team. Send me the feedback.
Dr. Lowe?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to offer one suggestion for the commission based on work we're doing with another similar body in developing a plan. And this is the current boundary and attendance zone plan that DME is running. We've got a strong advisory group of community members and others similar to the commission here. And that team reviews the ongoing recommendations. And it has also established what it calls office hours for individual members of that advisory group to meet with the team, to provide feedback based on what their reading is and to engage with the team. And Dr. Lowe, if you thought that was a good use of time, and if the commission thought that would be something that could be useful to commission members, it's working extremely well in that other context where individual advisory members, in this case commission members, could actually, come to office hours that the OST team has to basically provide the feedback, not in the context of the big meeting, which sometimes can be very difficult. That is one thought for the group to consider that I've seen work in another context.
I love it. And thank you for bringing up that suggestion, DM Kind.
I second that. That sounds like an excellent idea to get through something.
Especially given that, I want to say time is upon us, but I think it's a really great idea. What I can do is establish the office hours and invite the commissioners to it, and just have that space available for anyone who wants to and is able to attend, to bring your feedback. And again, I apologize if there's some who feel as though that what you wanted into the plan was not incorporated. If you think we should shift some things or put some things in and take some things out that should take precedence over others, let us know. But I like the idea, the kind of office hours, so that will I will do that for myself and for our office, where you guys can come in and continue the conversation and the edits, recommendations for the plan, so that we can make sure that what is included is reflective of what the commission aligns with. We are at time, but again, I think the idea of office hours is an exceptional one, and it will do that effective immediately. Can you go back to the slides for the commission meeting, Alex? So close this one out and pull back up the our PowerPoint slides for the actual meetings. And I will establish those office hours at minimum. Well, if you want more frequent, if you feel strongly about a specific frequency, at minimum once a week, I'll dedicate at least 3 or so hours, a 3 or so hour window to give you flexibility, where you're able to come in and bring your thoughts and recommendations for the strategic plan. And I know some people will need a little bit more time to kind of digest it, but again, we welcome your thoughts, and we're going to create a space for those thoughts to be not only heard, but also implemented into the actual plan for the OST office. This is a reminder of where we are for the OST Commission. We have a meeting on 9/20. Yes, Commissioner Berkey.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm just really stuck on the fact that, we received the email yesterday afternoon from a member of the team with documents to review in preparation for the meeting. And in the email, there were a couple of things that were highlighted in a different color to signal to us that they were new pieces of information for our attention. And I did review those things prior to this meeting because I thought that
you're
the
going in and out.
information might be relevant. What I did not realize was that you had what I had not realized was that you had once again revised the strategic plan document. And so I didn't really have time to prepare for this meeting to see. I just feel that once again, like there was somehow a breakdown in the communication that would have helped us to know that there were some rather significant changes made to the strategic plan for our review that we should have done before getting on this meeting tonight. And I just wish that had been communicated along with the documents that were sent, because I just find it frustrating that you've made really significant revisions that we were not really fully appraised of, and therefore less prepared to address the new version of the plan in this meeting that was intended to go through it in detail. So anyway, I'm just, I wish the communication had been more clear. And I will take up the office hour idea because I think that's a great idea.
Thank you for sharing. Commissioner Hanson?
And I have sorry.
His hand was up, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I'll just be really quick. I just wanted to echo that and say, I don't know what feels or sounds reasonable to others, but I sort of felt myself in a similar bind to review and sort of track the changes in the document. And I guess I'd like to request that if we're getting any new documents, we get them, at least a week in advance. I know people have really busy personal and work schedules, and I think it also would probably be helpful for some of us to be able just to, compare notes or share ideas together, so that we can, maybe discuss and, ideally come to consensus even before a call. I appreciate all the time and attention that you've given us tonight to, work through and talk through these issues and raise them. And I think if we have an opportunity to get the documents at least a week in advance, again, not sure it sounds reasonable to others, we can sort of confer offline and see if we can formulate also some specific recommendations, which I think our hope and goal would be we can formulate some specific recommendations or, even amendments to the plan. It would make your life and your job easier too, because we can give you some or offer some actionable solutions.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanson. So, what were we saying, Commissioner Crow? I know.
I was saying I agree with everything that they just said, but I also had a question. Are we still on target or expected to vote on this next month with these changes? And if so, are the office hours going to be set up in the next week or so for us to hash out a lot of these details before September, or are we pushing back the final vote because this is an entirely new document that we have to like go through with subcommittees and figure out?
So we will set up office hours effective immediately. I can begin as early as tomorrow, and actually I'll do it twice a week just to make sure that that is accessible to everyone. So I will set up a window of time, at least a 2-hour chunk, so people have flexibility, and twice a week, so that people have opportunity to come in where they're able to. And I agree with you all. You do need more time to kind of sit with it, meet with your committees, reconvene, and edit where applicable. We were in the throes of lots of things related to the OST office, and it is absolutely no excuse. So I do appreciate you guys sharing it. And I agree with you all that you need more time to kind of look at the updates that have been made since our last meeting, because we did want to incorporate what you suggested into the living document of the strategic plan. So I wouldn't say we are on track for the September 28th approval. That ultimately will be the commission's decision once we get through the next month or so. And I defer to what the commission wants to do regarding the approval of the plan, whether it be another meeting to discuss or pushing towards an October special meeting or a November vote. Either one is fine by me. Yes, Commissioner Hanson?
I want to, sorry, I didn't catch who was the last speaker, but I want to thank them for raising the question. The approval at the end of the September meeting, I think it would be obviously ideal if we can still approve this on the timeline that you've established. I also think that it might be challenging for us to do it. And I was wondering if you could remind us if there is, a consequence or cost per se if we don't approve it in September, just so we can also all bear that in mind. I know the fiscal year ends at the end of September, and wondering if September is sort of our ideal date, or if it is our mandated date, and if we really don't have the option of pushing it back to October.
It is our ideal date.
Okay.
But I also want to honor the process. And so if we need more time, then we need more time. Commissioner Peacock, I see your hand raised. I know we're at time, but go ahead, Commissioner Peacock.
Yep. Thank you, Dr. Lowe. So my suggestion, I know the next meeting, unlike this one, is an official meeting rather than an unofficial meeting, but my recommendation would be to follow the recommendation of Deputy Mayor Kine and try to get as much as we can done in those office hours. And if we can, I would like to request if we can focus the sole September meeting for just discussion, revision, and trying to vote on the OST strategic plan if possible. If not, I understand if we have to continue pushing it back. But just, of course, public commentary is great, so we can have that too. But I think anything else that might need to be in that meeting, if we can cut everything else kind of short or minimize it to try to just focus the sole time towards the strategic plan and see what we can knock out at least. Would that be possible?
It is your call, Chair Peacock.
Yeah, because I think, this is something that, of course, each of the commissioners feels very strongly about, but I think, the closer we can get to that fiscal year, I think the better. So we can really just try to knock it out in those office hours and then focus the sole next meeting on that. I think that would be beneficial, but I'll leave that one up for discussion of the commission, see how everyone's feeling on that.
So what I do commit,
well.
Sorry, what do I do commit? I always try to time when people pause. My apologies if I interrupt people while you're speaking. What I do commit to is opening office hours twice a week from here on up until our next meeting, and that can see where we land regarding the draft. And I will, as we do that, update and share out as best as I possibly can the most recent version of the plan, so you guys have time to look at it, meet with the committees, and as we move forward. So what I heard is that I saw your hand cramp. Let's let me recap what I heard. We're going to have a minimum, the OST office will make ourselves available twice a week from here on out for office hours to take into consideration to discuss the content of the current plan as is. The commission wants to have at least a week in advance the documents are going to be used in anticipation of the next meeting so that they have time to reconvene, think through, collaborate, and come with recommendations for the plan. And we will seek to honor that as an office as much as we possibly can as we move forward. Chair Peacock would like us to get as close as possible as to a decision for September 28th. And the office always will support us in getting to that decision-making point for our next commission meeting where we can actually do a vote for the strategic plan. Did I miss anything?
The only other thing was just allotting as much time as possible within the next meeting towards the strategic plan. Because I know sometimes we end up having to spend a lot of time on the Learn 24 updates and things like that, which are, of course, excellent updates. We love to hear them. But we also got to get this done to be able to benefit the office.
Absolutely understood. So allot as much time in our next meeting to the strategic plan. Okay, thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
I think we can move on to the next slide, Alex, and that should be, so the next meeting is September 28th, and then we have a last meeting November 16th. We will discuss FY24 dates, either at our next meeting or at a November meeting, so we can have those on everyone's calendar for the next calendar year. Next slide. Again, next meeting is September 28th, and then Commissioner Peacock, the floor is yours.
Okay, great. Commissioners, thank you again for all of your time and effort. I would also like to thank our 3 public speakers for the excellent commentary. We really appreciated having your feedback and look forward to building a stronger relationship with each of you to continue improving the concerns that you had voiced today. We'll definitely set up a meeting with Deputy Mayor Kine so that those concerns can be voiced and we can work to improve upon them. Other than that, the next meeting, as Dr. Lowe had mentioned, will be September the 28th. Once again, it will be held virtually from 6 to 7:30. Commissioners, thank you all for your abundance of just thoughtfulness, being really caring towards this process and putting the genuine effort into wanting to improve this and not just, improving it for the sake of being done with it. It's great to see that everyone really cares and putting quality work out there. Other than that, is there any additional business or comments before we do adjourn? Okay, and if not, can we get a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Okay,
Or I
thank you,
second.
Commissioner Taylor. All right. And any seconds to that motion?
I second.
Okay, thank you. All right, great. Now again, since this wasn't a official quorum voting, we'll just, instead of going through the roll call, I will ask, are there any that oppose this motion? Okay, it sounds like this motion unanimously approves. Thank you again for all of your time and effort, commissioners, and we look forward to speaking with you again, not only on the 28th, but during these office hours as well, to get this knocked out and try to get as much work as we can done on it so that we can hopefully get it approved. Again, if not, we'll be flexible, but the goal really is to try to meet that deadline. So thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.